There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. We are going to get started here, and we're going to have folks trickling in, and that's totally fine. And hi to everybody that's online. So I want to welcome you to the UW's Decarbonization Town Hall. Thank you so much for being here, especially on this gorgeous day. Thank you for coming and talking about decarbonization. I wanted to start by just thanking the Faculty Senate and the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship who are hosting this event. I am Louisa Dulude. I'm your moderator. I'm the UW Sustainability Director, and our office has partnered with the Faculty Senate and FCUPS to help bring this event to you tonight. And thank you for engaging in the discussion. So I want to start off by introducing our Provost, Tricia Serio. So Tricia joined the University of Washington as Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs in August of 2023. As the university's academic and budget officer, Dr. Serio leads the faculty and allocates resources to promote each student's academic experience and success. A biochemist, she holds a faculty appointment in the UW School of Medicine's Department of Biochemistry. Dr. Serio came to the UW from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I am also from Massachusetts, where she was Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, as well as a professor in the Department of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Serio.
Thank you very much. Wasn't expecting my picture to be up there too. Good afternoon and welcome to this UW Town Hall on decarbonization. To start, the University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. I'd really like to thank the Faculty Senate for hosting this event, and especially the Faculty Senate Chair, Cynthia Doherty, Faculty Senate Vice Chair, Louisa, Mackenzie, and Gautam Reddy, who serves as the chair of the Senate Committee on Planning and Budgeting. I really appreciate your partnership in seeking climate solutions at the university. Earlier this month, President Cauce's annual address focused on the positive impact in the world that the university has. It's the heart of its public mission. This commitment is evident in everything that we do, in the deep engagement of faculty, staff, and students in seeking climate solutions to address the increasing frequency and severity of wildfires, flooding, disease, and drought that threaten the health of our planet and the global population, especially for those communities with the fewest resources. While we most often think, and I would argue here, about the contributions the university is making to address the climate crisis through our research and innovations, teaching and learning, community partnerships, our campuses are equally committed to leading by example. And today we've gathered here to talk about our plans for doing our part on our own campuses. Our goal is to reduce the energy we use to heat and cool our buildings, to support innovative research and technology, to provide life-saving care for our patients, and to steward our environment while pursuing our mission. In her address last week, President Cauce also emphasized that one of our greatest strengths is our convening power, which allows us to engage in collaborative problem solving, both across the diverse disciplines within our comprehensive public university and in concert with other universities, governmental agencies, and a broad array of public and private entities across our state, country, and globe, because the problems we face will take all of us to solve them. And I think there's no other challenge for which that is true more than the climate crisis. I think the grand challenge of decarbonizing our tri-campus infrastructure and transitioning from fossil fuels is no small task, but it's one that we're committed to accomplishing together and with urgency. I believe that this is exactly the type of initiative that showcases what the university is made of. We channel the ethos of the Pacific Northwest and our values to embrace emergent challenges. We develop innovative solutions that leverage our expertise in ways that aren't restricted by what we've done in the past. We pursue new paths emboldened by our long history of success. I have every confidence that we will set the standard for others to follow through this very important work. Thank you for engaging in this discussion. And now I'd like to turn it over to Louisa Mackenzie, Vice Chair of the Faculty Senate, for her remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm masking for the sake of the person using the mic after me. I sound worse than I feel. I'm recovering from the flu. It's my honor to provide, the big picture of me is a little unnerving, I agree, to provide some remarks for this town hall organized by the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship. We're really grateful for your leadership and initiative. Some of you here might not have heard of this council, and others may not really know what the Senate does. And since this is our first town hall, I thought I'd take a moment to explain how this event exemplifies the kind of work that we do in shared governance. So I'm here to recruit you. This council is one of 12 working to address a multitude of issues at the tri-campus level. There are councils on teaching, faculty affairs, equity and justice, cybersecurity, you name it. The councils recommend actions in the Senate, including legislation in dialogue with central administration. Shared governance is a way to make your voice heard and to work with colleagues who often have deep expertise on the issues you care about. This council is an example. Professor Jan Whittington, one of the co-chairs of the council, publishes research on subjects like emissions reduction and resilience through capital investment planning. You should run for governor or something. We are so lucky to have colleagues like this bringing their expertise into shared governance. Also here today, we have Dean Hodge of the Business School, the Director of Sustainability, Lisa Dulude, Dave Woodson, Director of Energy, Utilities and Operations, and student Lela Corson from Institutional Climate Action to remind us of the intergenerational impacts of decisions we make. These people know what they're talking about, and we're really grateful for the opportunity to learn from and think with them. Stories of our changing climate have become regular features in the news. And because apparently we need more bad news, 2023 is on track to be the warmest year ever. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change calls for immediate and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions if we are to limit warming even to 2%. As the young climate activist and UW graduate Benji Bakker reminds us, quote, climate change doesn't have a political party. And it was President Kause who drew my attention to this outstanding young activist. I encourage you to Google Benji Bakker this evening. Still, we continue to emit more greenhouse gases each year. Incredibly, we've not yet reached peak emissions. Here at the University of Washington, the accomplishments of our faculty on climate change do extend worldwide. What can we say, though, about our own campuses? How are we addressing this global emergency right here in our facilities and our daily practices? I just got back from conference travel. Maybe I didn't need to travel. I certainly wouldn't have got sick. Among state agencies, our Seattle campus is second only to the Department of Transportation in greenhouse gas emissions for our operations. Our current target for net zero is 2050, with intermediate targets set for 2030 and 2040. This is the target, the default target, prescribed for all state agencies by law. The target is not immediate or rapid. We can do better than simply complying with the law. We can be leaders. We're hosting this town hall to raise awareness and advance the concern already expressed by faculty, staff, and students that we accelerate these targets. So our students are watching. The next generation is watching. My niece, Amaya, marched in DC last month for the Green New Deal for public schools. She's applying to universities to study environmental justice. She and Lela and many like them are paying attention to what institutions of higher education are doing, as well as saying, we can lead by example. Decarbonization is a challenge. There's no way around the cost. At a time when daily concerns about the cost of living are also urgent, when class sizes are increasing and offices are understaffed, it can seem like a secondary financial and also social concern. But I hope we can think our way to an inclusive solution in line with our institutional values of equity and excellence. This is not just about our emissions on campus. It is ultimately about environmental justice. It is a challenge, but also an opportunity to use our expertise and to stand out as pioneers of sustainable and hopeful practices. And now I'll turn things over to Louisa, Dulude, and Professor Whittington. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louisa, and thank you, Provost Serio, for those great remarks. So we're going to start getting into the meat of the events today, and our agenda really has each of our panelists speaking for about 6 to 7 minutes, kind of providing an overview from their perspective as a faculty, as staff, as student. And so I'm going to introduce each of our panelists before they give their presentation. And please hold your questions until the end. We're going to have, after all of the presentations, we have a few questions for the panelists, but we're going to do Q&A from the audience as well, and Q&A from folks that are joining us online. Okay, so our first speaker is Jan Whittington. It's my pleasure to introduce her today. So Dr. Jan Whittington is Associate Professor in the Department of Urban Design and Planning and Founding Director of the Urban Infrastructure Lab. She is the Faculty Advisor to the UW Student Solar Group and co-chair of the Faculty Senate Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship. She teaches infrastructure planning and finance, public finance, science for environmental policy, urban climate solutions, and solar development. And prior to her academic career, she spent 10 years with infrastructure giant Bechtel Corporation as a strategic planner and environmental scientist. Jan has a PhD in city and regional planning from UC Berkeley. Welcome, Jan.
Hey, it's great to be here. Ooh, okay. Technology. All right. Before I dive into the presentation, I just want to say a few words about the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship. As one of these dozen or so councils that are set up inside of the Faculty Senate, we are the one that are supposed to have faculty's eyes on how the campuses themselves perform, how they perform as physical assets, how we plan for them, how we budget for them, how we arrange finance for them, how our classrooms are functioning for us or not so well for us. And I think that climate has always been on our minds in this council. And now it's really at the front of our minds. And this town hall is a way of raising awareness of where we are and the difference between where we are and where we need to be, frankly, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions for the operations of our campus. So with that, here we go. So greenhouse gas emissions, technically, people talk about this greenhouse gas emissions as existing in 3 different types or categories or scopes. The first scope of greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1, are direct emissions. This is what we're going to be talking about today. The ways in which fossil fuels are used and burned in order to get what we need to have done in our daily operations of our campuses. And that includes just generating energy. It includes generating energy for our buildings. It includes heating and cooling of our buildings. It includes the gasoline that's burned to be able to operate our vehicles. And then fugitive emissions, the things that are leaking out. For example, the E-lots, part of the big parking lots where all the tailgating happens before Husky games, the big areas of asphalt that are north of the IMA. That's the site of a former municipal landfill, which is still leaking some amount of methane into the atmosphere. So that's our scope 1 emissions. And we are talking in this town hall about all 3 campuses. So the Seattle campus, the Bothell campus, and the Tacoma campus. Scope 2 emissions, these are the emissions that come from the electricity that we buy. So if we buy electricity from Seattle City Light, or which we do here at the UW campus, or if we buy electricity from Puget Sound Energy, which is what the Bothell campus does, the question about what scope 2 energy emissions is a question about what are the emissions of those electricity providers. Scope 3 emissions, these have been getting popular, but popular through different names of concepts for how to deal with them. So if you're talking about in your courses or in your research, if you're talking about the circular economy, you're talking about scope 3 emissions. If you're talking about embedded emissions, you're talking about scope 3 emissions. And so scope 3 emissions have to do with a lot of things that we purchase. And that includes things like goods and services that we buy. It includes how the materials that make up the buildings that we build. It includes things like commuting, getting to and from our offices, and includes air travel. So today, though, we're going to talk about scope 1 emissions. So I want to break down scope 1 emissions into for the UW into their main categories. And here we are getting a sneak preview from a greenhouse gas inventory that's still being finalized out of the Office of Sustainability. And this is the first comprehensive greenhouse gas inventory we've done at the University of Washington that includes all 3 scopes of emissions. But here we're just looking at the data for scope 1 emissions. And here you can see that 87% of our scope 1 emissions come from the buildings, the operation of the utilities that serve the buildings in the Seattle campus, excuse me. We have another 13% of emissions coming from fugitive emissions, the operation of UW fleet, and other facilities. So Tacoma and Bothell, yeah, they're part of the equation, but really the main source of greenhouse gas emissions for operations on this campus at the University of Washington are about the operations of facilities on this campus. So in terms of scope 1 emissions, I think it's important to point out that we already have laws in place here in the state of Washington that the University of Washington is required to comply with in order to bring down our greenhouse gas emissions. The Jay Inslee, our governor in the state of Washington, really put out a strong climate platform for his administration and managed to pass almost every law that they conceived of to be able to work on greenhouse gas emissions and climate. And with that are targets that the university is required to comply with to get to what we call net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. You can see here listed under the Climate Leadership Act, the 2050 target is a 95% reduction. Now, this acknowledges that there's going to be some small amount of emissions that are just going to be nearly impossible or impossible to get rid of. So the law allows us to sequester and thereby offset those emissions with mechanisms that would reduce that much greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere. These are our current targets right now. There are current targets by law, and they're also the university's own current targets. We also have the Climate Commitment Act that currently requires in the state of Washington that we purchase the right to continue to pollute. So for every ton of greenhouse gases that we emit into the atmosphere, we have to purchase from the state the right to be able to pollute in that way. We are not going to talk really about Scope 2 emissions today, but one of the reasons why we don't have to say much about it is because there is a separate state law requiring all of the electricity providers in the state of Washington to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from their electricity. And they have a schedule for doing that requires them to be 100% clean by 2045. That's pretty convenient for us. And in Scope 3 emissions, there are a lot of new policies coming online. And it's really, frankly, a matter of time before the data on this becomes robust enough for us to be able to have regulations in place. But let me bring you back to Scope 1, because this is what we're talking about today. We've brought together this panel because we want to be able to talk about the possibility of accelerating the elimination of these emissions. So you're going to hear today about plans that we have underway on this campus to eliminate that 87% from UW Seattle buildings. And a lot of this has to do with our central power plant, our steam plant on campus. But if you think about it, how far do we have to go to get to 95%? If we already have plans in place to do the 87, and those, we have commitments, we have statements from the Board of Regents that already position us to be able to deal with that 87% within 10 years. So why can't we make a commitment to accelerate to 95, right? Why do we have to wait till 2050 to get to 95% reduction in emissions? If we start tacking on, by the way, UW Transportation Services has already committed to decarbonizing its fleet within the same 10-year period, right? So we've got commitments for the buildings, we've got commitments for fleet. Okay, all of a sudden that 87 is 89%. If we can start dealing with some of the fugitive emissions, we make it up to 95%, we can reach that net zero by a much earlier date. In fact, if you ask me, I would say we think we can reach that goal by 2035. So net zero by 2035, or like we like to say, 95 by 35. What do you think? That's what we're talking about here. So, and that's, I don't mean to make it a trick question. It's something that the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship has been working on, putting together and checking with the experts across the campus to see what's doable. And it's going to cost money, and we want to have a Q&A session that includes discussion about that too. So here we go. Great, thank you.
Okay, up next, I'd like to introduce Frank Hodge. Frank is the Orrin and Janet Smith Dean of the UW Foster School of Business. Prior to becoming Dean in 2019, Frank served as Accounting Department Chairperson and UW Faculty Athletics Representative to the Pac-12 Conference and the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Frank joined UW in 2000. He earned an undergraduate degree and was a student athlete at Carroll College. His MBA and PhD are from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. Welcome and thank you, Frank.
Thank you. What that introduction didn't reveal is I have a strong personal interest in this topic. My father was a forest ranger. When he first started his career, he was asked to work with fire within the natural ecosystem. Partway through his career, he was then asked to suppress fire. And I think we all know how that worked out. And so I had a front row seat to see how a change in policy can have drastic implications on our natural environment. So this is a topic of strong personal as well as professional interest for me. What I want to do here today is share a couple of stories. And I want to start with our purpose statement. So our purpose statement at the Foster School is to better humanity through business. It's not to just better business. It's to better humanity through business. And today that has to incorporate considering the implications of our decisions on our climate. And so we not only as leaders in the Foster School consider that, but we try to teach that to our students. And I want to provide you just 3 examples. We have many more we could present, but I'm going to provide you 3 examples of what we're doing in the Foster School and then talk briefly about one university-wide pre-initiative that I'm co-leading with Maya Tolstoy, the College of the Dean of the Environment. The first one I'll talk about is beautiful Founders Hall. So if you haven't been to our newest building, we opened Founders Hall last September. It's been open for approximately a year. It is a mass timber building. We made that decision to build it with mass timber, even though it was more expensive to do so. And part of the reason we did this, it's a beautiful building if you haven't been there. I mean, it's just absolutely fantastic to be in, a nice work environment. It draws people in. The idea is that it respects the land on which it sits and integrates with the land as opposed to imposed upon the land. And that's consistent with the Native culture's belief about how we should have balance in our community with the structures that we're building on our sites as well. This building, through this graph, is expected to have over its initial 60-year cycle a 76% less carbon footprint than a traditional concrete and steel building. We hope to realize that, but we did this upfront in order to reduce our carbon footprint as a part of the team that needs to work together to do this at the campus level. It has windows, all of the top floors open to flush the building out at night, so we don't have to use air conditioning. And, you know, the plants around the building are all low water, that kind of stuff. So we put a lot of intentional thought into this building and how it works. We also did something unique. We worked with a startup company called Arius Earth to sell the sequestered carbon. So this is the first time a transaction like this has been executed globally. You may be familiar with forest lands that have sequestered carbon where people buy carbon offsets. You could buy the carbon offset of the sequestered carbon in the wood structure of Founders Hall. And we sold that sequestered carbon not because we wanted the money for a carbon offset, right? I understand that there are issues with carbon offsets. We did it to reduce the green premium, so to encourage other people to build with green materials. It cost us, it's estimated, about $3 million more to build Founders Hall with mass timber. And so we need to find ways to reduce that so that others have an incentive to build with green materials. One way we did it was to sell the sequestered carbon. The individuals that bought the sequestered carbon then donated it back to the university. So it is not owned by an external entity. That was really important because we're a government entity and this building technically belongs to the state of Washington. So it was important that we have that donated back. But that's one example. Second example is a student-focused example, and that's climate travel. 3 examples here. Last year, we did a trip where we took students to Costa Rica to study the coffee industry there, visiting small farms to large companies to see what they're doing to reduce their carbon footprint in an industry that is really important to Seattle, coffee, right, as it is to the rest of the world. We have a trip this year planned to Spain, which will focus on ocean and supply chain and what companies in Spain and other parts of Europe are doing to reduce their carbon footprint in transporting goods and products around the world. And then the following year, we have a trip scheduled to Guatemala to learn a little bit about what that country is doing. We have not picked a theme for that trip, but will. The idea here is, and I do recognize that travel has a carbon impact, the idea is we as Americans do not have all the answers. We need to understand what others around the world are doing so that we can work in partnership with them to solve this global problem. And so getting students out there communicating with others is critically important. The UW climate risk is my last Foster example. So this is an example where what we're trying to do with this is bring people together with data and analytical tools so that they can assess the climate risks of their decisions. We found that large companies like Microsoft and Amazon have internal teams that can do this. But most of our economy is not made up of large companies. It's made up of medium and small size companies that don't have the internal resources to do this kind of analysis. We hope to provide that. We will provide student teams that can work with these companies to assess the impact, for example, of what their supply chain is doing, given the change in climate as they try to transport their goods around the United States. And so we can do some geospatial mapping with their supply chain paths to give them some assessment of their climate risk, specifically from a financial perspective. But that's the Climate Risk Lab. This is just one of many, many examples we have at the Foster School. And some just what I went through there. You can see this is a cross-campus initiative in partnership with multiple institutes here on campus. And then the last thing I want to talk about is a campus-wide initiative that I'm a part of. Happy to answer more questions during the Q&A on this. This is the pre-initiative. I'm going to be careful to say that because it is not an official initiative of the University of Washington, but it, I think, will be an important part of our future. It is called the Climate Action and Adaptation Pre-Initiative, and I'm co-leading this with Maya Tolstoy from the College of the Environment. The idea here is to create an idea incubator and impact accelerator to take the breadth and depth we have on this campus in climate and amplify its impact in the community. Okay. We did some lightning talks and we asked people to submit a 1-minute video. We got 105 videos from 55 departments across 3 campuses. That is barely touching the surface of the breadth that we have. We need to capitalize that so that we can amplify our impact in the community to make some real differences here. And that's what this is about. It is a committee, a task force has been formed to help us write up what we'll be focusing on. And these are the individuals. So you can see that this is very diverse, both across campuses and across disciplines. And the idea is that as we roll forward, we're speaking with one voice and we'll be able to have some pretty significant impact as we get donor support behind this. So stay tuned for more information on that. And then lastly, I'll conclude with one of the things that we've learned is we need to walk the talk if we're going to be serious about being a leader in climate. And I mean, we as the University of Washington. And so we need to think about our operations on campus as well as the research that we're doing to have impact. And that's what our next conversation is about. So I'll turn it over so Dave can be introduced. I'll give that to Dave.
Thank you, Frank. Very exciting to hear about the pre-initiative. And next up, I'd like to introduce David Woodson. So David is the Executive Director of Campus Energy, Utilities, and Operations here at UW, where he is leading the effort to decarbonize the Seattle campus. Dave previously held a similar role at the University of British Columbia and now is enjoying the opportunity to apply the lessons learned from UBC at UW. He is also an alum, Aero and Astro, 1991. Don't know if you knew that was in there, and his MBA from UBC. He was recently elected to the executive as the executive of the International District Energy Association. Thanks so much, Dave.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. And yeah, so the operational side of things, and the only piece that wasn't in there was that when I went to school here, I was actually part of the Husky Band. So it's a little dangerous to give a Husky Band member a microphone. You never know what might happen. Yeah, absolutely wonderful to be here. I would describe myself as a storyteller, a bit of a dreamer. Someone say, why did somebody put a dreamer in charge of the utility plant? But he's in the back row in the middle if you want to ask him. Yeah, I only have 6 minutes, right? So okay, get to the thing. And clicker, we got to click. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Slide advance. Nope, wrong way. Other way. There we go. Okay. All right. So operationally, 4 major challenges facing our campus when we focus on that operational scope 1 carbon. Number 1, the steam plant that was referred to earlier. That if you just focus on the Seattle campus, that's 93% of our scope 1 emissions. So to make significant change in our greenhouse gas emissions on our campus, we have to change the way in which we heat our buildings on our campus. So right now, what happens is we take natural gas, fossil fuel, we burn it at the steam plant, produce steam, distribute that steam out to the tunnels, out to the buildings, and then that heat is transferred to the buildings for heating the buildings and for heating the domestic hot water in the buildings. I'll just take a little step back. Part of my fundamental role here at the university is to make sure that all of the buildings are heated. Also to make sure in the summertime that they're actually cooled. And maybe even most importantly is that we're a tier 1 research university, and the electricity that is provided to all of the buildings has to work. You can't have disruptions, or we can't have power outages. So there's a fundamental piece that as we make these changes, that we have to do that in a way that is thoughtful of the foundational element of what the university is all about and the role we play in it. All right, so number 1, got to address the power plant. Number 2, energy efficiency. And this comes up again and again and again, but earlier was made reference to the role of electrical utilities and having clean electricity. Well, Pacific Northwest, we're pretty lucky that we do have like 100% or 90% plus technically nuanced 100% from Seattle City Light. The issue isn't how clean is the electricity. The issue is how clean is the incrementally new electricity. So as everybody decarbonizes, and across the country, this issue of decarbonization and electrification is faced by everyone. And so the question is, what does that incremental electricity look like? And the first thing that we can do is, well, the electricity that we already use, if we could use it better, then we don't have to add to that incremental electricity problem. So everything that you're going to see in our plan speaks to interchangeably is the word being more efficient is better use of the electricity that we have. All right. Third part is that, electrical capacity constraint. So this same issue regionally, everyone's decarbonizing, electrifying, all those same pressures are being placed on Seattle City Light. They are hopeful that everyone's efforts on the electrical efficiency side will make the room that's required for the growth. The challenge is it's not just decarbonization that's putting pressure on the electrical utilities. It's EV charging stations. And in the case of UW, that's not a at night charging at your house. That's a during the day charging in the parking lot where all the faculty, staff, students, all of us arrive on campus. Thirdly, we're in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of our buildings, I'm sure you've been in them. I talked about that we provide cooling as one of our services. Well, actually, only about 40% of the buildings have cooling in them because in the Pacific Northwest, we had mild marine air. And so our buildings are designed not to have cooling in them. They're relying on passive requirements, like Frank described with respect to their new building. But as summers get hotter, that puts even greater pressure on buildings that weren't designed with cooling in them. That new cooling comes from the consumption of electricity. So that's a third pressure. The fourth is we live in a world where people thought electricity was really cheap, or at least it used to be really cheap. And so we get industry coming in with things like data centers and putting it into the state of Washington, using up a lot of that cheap electrical reserve that was there. So all 4 of those I would identify as sort of being major challenges, putting pressure on those electrical utilities. And so our part is to make sure that we are as efficient as possible with the electricity that we use. Whew, okay, all right. I haven't even got past the first slide. The last part is you've probably heard people talk about, you've heard me talk about the fact of how expensive this is going to be. It's a big dollar. I'm sure anywhere from 800 million to $1 billion has been thrown out there. And the reality is utilities is an expensive business in the first place. And so if you just look at what we would spend anyway on the existing infrastructure of the renewal of it, if you supplant that with, well, let's do something different that actually addresses the first 3 items on this list, well, that's where we're getting really creative and smart with what our future looks like. All right. So as you know, I probably could do this presentation in about 30 minutes, but I'm going to do it in 5, I promise. All right, a little quick history of the plant. Look, we've done this before. The plant has changed locations multiple times. As a matter of fact, although the 1908 is the present location of the existing plant, the only thing that's left of the 1908 plant is a plaque saying that it was here. But the location's there. We used to get coal delivered on trains on the Burt-Gilman Railroad, otherwise now known as the Burt-Gilman Trail. Right. So, all right, this is it. 5-step energy strategy. Right. This is what we are doing. And to highlight, number one, there's the 4 issues that I've already identified along the left side. The first part, focus on energy efficiency. This is already happening. It's been happening for the last year and a half, 2 years. We have invested money. We actually got proceeds from the state's Climate Commitment Act to take big headway onto this energy efficiency piece to make better use of the electricity that we have, number one. But in there are things like enhancing the meters in buildings, upgrading the control systems of how the buildings operate, using modern data analytics to better analyze the data of how buildings perform. I'm flying through this. Believe me, there's like a 10-minute conversation on each of these pieces if anyone wants to have it. And the fourth is this idea of a green revolving fund. Spend $3 million on energy efficiency projects that have a payback of less than a year. Use the savings to reinvest into that program the following year and just spend $3 million a year for forever, focused on energy efficiency, all paid for from a self-sustaining process. Second part of the strategy, convert to hot water. This is kind of fundamental. The fundamental problem is steam is a great way to deliver energy on campus. The fundamental problem with it is it's too hot from a temperature standpoint. We need to lower the temperature. And the reason why we want to do that is because there's been great advancements in heat pump technology in the last 5-10 years that allows us to lift up low-grade heat from different sources, which I'm going to describe 3, where we can now use that technology to reuse what would be wasted heat that we can't do today because the steam system is too hot. So this is step 2, the convert to hot water is a foundational piece. New pipes in the tunnels, new energy transfer stations in every single building. So it's a very some people ask me, well, is this going to be very disruptive? Well, I guess the best way to describe it, we are a half medical campus, right? So think of it as if the heating system is like the circulatory system of the body and the electrical system is the nervous system, we're going to do surgery on the body while it's wide awake, and we're going to change everything and have nobody know what's going on. Okay, look, there's going to be disruptions, but we are going to do everything we can to minimize this. The good side for me is that this is actually my second time through this rodeo. Prior to coming here, I was at University of British Columbia. We did the steam to hot water conversion, and there are lots of things we did right, and there's lots of things that we've learned from that we're going to do differently the second time around. All right, third part of the strategy, and I've probably got, a minute left, or am I already over? I'm already over, okay, all right. Okay, I'll go, okay. Okay, they probably knew this was going to happen. Centralized cooling. So about just under half of our buildings are serviced from the chillers that we have in the central plant. The other half are served by chillers directly in the buildings. And so the element here is cooling is like heating. So when we think of your box in your fridge, right? Like you cool the fridge by pulling the heat out of the box, and then you have radiators on the back that dissipates that heat into the air of your kitchen. Same thing happens on the campus. We have chillers at the central plant that send cold water out to the buildings. We extract the heat from the buildings. We bring it back to the central plant. And then if you ever walk along the Burt-Gilman Trail, you'll hear the sound of running water in the waterfalls. That's us doing evaporative cooling, dumping that waste heat to the atmosphere. Right, to the atmosphere, right? We're just getting rid of the heat. That's because the steam system's too hot. We can't reuse it. If we had a hot water system, we could reclaim that heat and use it and displace natural gas through heat pumps that use electricity. So it's a fuel switch from natural gas to electricity. And that's one example. And the other part of that strategy is eliminate all of these standalone chillers that are all throughout the buildings and put all that cooling load in the central plants. The reason? Because those chillers in the buildings use twice as amount of electricity to produce the same amount of cooling as the chillers in the central plant. So back to, we want to be really smart about the electricity that we do use. That is how we do that. All right, electrify heating. This gets into ideas around those same heat pumps. We can reclaim waste heat from the sewer. So we're in the city, we have regional sewer lines that run by both plants. And what I'd highlight, we're not talking about the solids in the sewer, we're talking about the heat in the sewer. So think of the morning when you get up and you have a shower, right? All of that warm water that's in your shower goes right down your drain. That's that warm water that we want to go after. And it turns out that the regional sewer lines actually run right beside both our plants. So that's a year-round opportunity for reclaiming. Anybody saw the article in the Seattle Times last week? That's a project that Mackenzie and the developer are doing in Seattle in partnership with King County. We want to do the same thing here for the campus. The heart of this is to say that the first 4 parts, and I'm skipping stuff because I'm way over time, is to say that the first 4 parts, that's like the 80-20 rule, right? That gets us 80% there with respect to our campus carbon emissions. The last 20%, what we highlighted is to say, look, are there technologies today, renewable natural gas, climate capture at the stack? Are those viable technologies today? Yes. But do we, they come with strings attached, and I could explain that if you like, but for another time. But the point is, we don't have to actually pull the trigger on that idea right now. We can wait to see what other advancements happen in the marketplace over the next 10 years to decide what we do with that final 10%. Because we don't just use steam for heating buildings. We also use it for process loads in the hospital, in our medical areas and research spaces. And so there most likely will always be a need for steam. So we need to find a way to provide that steam in a way that's consistent with our overall plans. Okay, jump, wrong way. Back. Yep, that's the sewer line map. See, I'm jumping over this. Oh, the lake. So opportunity here, there's groups that are looking at the ship canal. One of the problems with the ship canal is it's shallow, so it overheats, and that becomes a barrier for salmon that are returning through the Ballard locks. And so there's a number of groups that are looking at a technical solution to take cold water from the deep part of Lake Washington and use it to cool the ship canal, focused on the betterment of the salmon issue. We're just turning around saying, hey, there might be an opportunity to also not only cool the ship canal for the salmon, but also to provide provisions for cooling for the campus. It's a better use of electricity. There's still electricity to run the pumps to get the water up, but it's a lot less electricity than in comparison to providing electricity from chillers. Secondly, once all that infrastructure is in place, the opportunity then to take that same cold water in the wintertime and take the heat out of that cold water and return colder water to the ship canal, then that's the same, apply it to the same heat pumps for the sewer and the cooling tower idea, and it works in the same function. So kind of a potentially a win-win-win-win in terms of environmental betterment for salmon, a improved greenhouse gas emission reduction, an electrical mitigation piece, and improved climate adaptation for cooling. 4 wins altogether, one project. So, but a lot of work. This is at the starting stage of a really, really great idea. Time frame, dollars, quick jump. Yeah, goal is as I think Jan made reference to, 10 years. And there's not just what's happening on the planet, what we read in the news each week. It's the fact that there's actually some real great funding opportunities. The federal government has the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act starts to sunset in 2030 and is over in 2032 unless it gets new funding. So on that basis, and you only receive the funding after the work is complete. So any parts of our project that we complete prior to 2030 that's eligible for our area funding, we are motivated to get them done before 2030 to access those federal funds, which could fund up to 50% of components of this project. For example, there I keep going backwards the wrong way, and there we go. I made it only 10 minutes over.
Thanks, Dave. I also want to just note that if folks are looking for more information on what Dave just talked about, if you go to the UW Sustainability website and click on Campus and Energy, there's a lot of information under the energy transformation page, including a lot more detail on the 5-step strategy there. Okay, so next up, I want to introduce Lela Corson. Lela is a second-year student at UW studying physics. She is passionate about the environment and hopes to develop fusion technology someday. She has engaged with decarbonization as a member of the student task force and through activism with ICA She is excited to share how students feel about this issue with you tonight. And in her free time, you can find her camping, rollerblading, thrifting, or reading. Thanks so much, Lela.
Okay, hi. So I'm the student. I'm providing the student perspective here. And to do that, I need to provide the youth perspective. There's a lot of students here, so hopefully you agree with what I'm saying. But I would say young people are really worried about climate change. There was a study we looked at. You can read some of the statistics here, but kind of the most striking to me was that 45% of people surveyed said their feelings about climate change negatively affected their daily life and functioning. So that is more than just like I'm reading a news article and like worried about climate change for an hour. We are thinking about this issue every day, and it's affecting our lives in a real way. And it's easy to feel this way when these are kind of like our prospects. So this is a graph from the latest IPCC report that one of my professors showed me in a class spring quarter. And it basically breaks down like from when you were born, how affected you are going to be by climate change. And you know, if you're born in 1950, you're not really going to get the worst of it. But if you're born in 2020, your person's getting really dark. You're getting some climate change is possibly and probably going to be pretty bad for you. And so this is something that's really scary and really frustrating as a young person, both to think about just like, what is my future going to be like? And also to think about like oil executives in the 70s being like, oh yeah, we realize this is a problem and we're going to cover it up and we're going to keep selling our fossil fuels. So now to bring this back to UW, the students here are mostly young people. And so we are concerned about climate change as young people, and we're doing things. ASU-Dub is in the middle of writing climate legislation right now. It's one of like their first things that they're working on this year. And as part of ICA, which is Institutional Climate Action, I have found a community of people who really care deeply about this issue. And last year we did a lot of cool things. We held a march. That's the middle photo right there. We had like over 100 people come. And then after the march, we chained ourselves to the power plant. Not all of us, but there was like a small group of us who did. But we were also really like supported by other community members, students. It wasn't just us. We had a lot of people like bringing us food, all that kind of thing. We also did a die-in with people like pretending to be dead to just remind everybody that emitting greenhouse gases is not just like bad for the planet. Like there are real impacts on people's health. I think the statistic now is that 1 in 5 people die, like 1 in 5 deaths worldwide are due to heat. That is only going to get worse with climate change. So students care about this issue, and it's something that we're really worried about, is what I'm trying to say here. This is just a really quick slide to like, this is obviously a huge transition, and it's going to cost a lot of money, but it's not like out of the ballpark of things that UW has done before. We're a large institution, we have a lot of resources. We remodeled the Husky Stadium recently, and that cost a lot of money. And so it's a lot of money, but this is something that's really important to do. And like, you know, in science, we talk about orders of magnitude. I would say this is within the same order of magnitude of projects that have been done before. Okay, and then this is my last slide. I'm going to go through some of like my frustrations that I have with UW as a student, but then I'm going to leave y'all with a hopeful note, so it's not all like down. So UW purports itself and is proud of its climate leadership. And while that is true in many ways with like the classroom, you know, classes and research, when it comes down to it, we're still emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, as we've seen in past presentations. And you cannot be a climate leader in all senses without addressing emissions on your own campus. And I would love, as a student of UW, to be able to say, well, look at my university, we're awesome, we do everything awesome with climate, but I can't right now. And so hopefully, and you know, there's some great plans in place, we can work towards that as quickly as possible. I will also say that as a student, I don't have, you know, the institutional power that some of the people in this room here have today. And it can be scary to think about my future being affected by climate change and not having this kind of like, you know, I still have my power, and you know, I can protest and all that, but nothing like institutional power. And then I look at the president of our university, who says that climate change is existential to them. In one of her blog posts, that is existential to us, the students, or ICA, or that's who she's referring to. And it's disappointing to kind of realize that we are on a different page than her in terms of the severity of this this issue. It's kind of an us problem maybe, but not her problem. And so I'm hoping obviously in the future that we can come to more of an agreement about this. But that's another like frustration that I feel. It's scary. Climate change is scary, and I want to be able to do things to fix it. And I want to be at a university that, you know, really is a climate leader. And so what I'll leave everyone with is, for those of you in the room who do have institutional power at UW or whatever your institution is, to listen to young people, listen to students, listen to the people who are going to be affected by this most in the future, hear what they're saying, and do what you can to make a positive change for our future. Like, now is the time to act on climate change, and we've got to do it. And for all of you students who are here, it's not hopeless, and we don't have no power either. There's so many ways that you can get involved on campus. You know, tell the people who do have the power what you think and what you want. Because if every single student, you know, got up and was like, we care about this, we want the power plant to be decarbonized right now, we can make a big difference. So yeah, what I'm saying is, I would like this, UW should decarbonize as quickly as possible. We are a large institution, we have a lot of resources, and this is a really important thing that we need to devote those resources to.
Thank you so much, Lela. That was a great close from our panelists. So yeah, another big round of applause for all of our panelists. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few prepared questions for the panelists that I'd like to ask, and then we'll have, after we ask a couple of those, we'll have times for questions from you all from the audience. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, so we heard from a lot of our panelists today that we know that this big infrastructure project comes with a price tag, which, you know, may be approaching $1 billion over the next 10 years. And we also know that there are state mandates and requirements that we need to meet in order to be in compliance with some of those state laws. So with all that in mind, what can you tell us about UW's approach to fund and finance decarbonization and come up with a capital plan to do that?
I think I'll get us started on that one. So let's just set out an idea that this costs $1 billion. Sounds big, right? 1,000 million, $1 billion. We're a big university. We spend in our capital budget every year half of that amount, about 500 million. So if we're talking about decarbonizing between now and 2035, that means we would have 12 years to spend. I mean, just talking in the most simple terms, even if we did not borrow any money and we could spread out all those costs evenly over the years, we're talking about adding another 20% on top of our existing capital budget. 20% maybe. So we're talking about $1 billion over 12 years. Let's say we managed to spend all that in 10 years. That's $100 million a year on top of a capital budget that's right now $500 million a year. Do you see what I'm talking about? So now add on top of that, we're talking about the same 10-year period that we have a federal law that is the biggest climate legislation ever passed in the United States. So if we know that a good set of these projects are going to qualify for some money back from the federal government under this Inflation Reduction Act. That could end up lowering that 100 million a year, certainly by 30%, maybe even by 50%. Okay, let's keep talking. In our state of Washington, we have a Climate Commitment Act and a Climate Leadership Act. And right now we are emitters, and we are paying for every ton of greenhouse gas equivalent emissions that we put into the atmosphere every year. But we can also make investments to change that and ask the state for money. We can also go the other way. The state is collecting money from all of the big emitters in this state, not just us. Now, how they spend that, they call it a cap and invest system, because the state wants to send that money back out to invest in the clean energy transition. So some portion of that 100 million every year could be the result of requesting money from the state of Washington's cap and invest system. All of a sudden, the price tag to UW itself starts to look a little less than $1 billion, a little less than 100 million every year. It's still something that we would have to pay, but that something starts to look a lot more reasonable when you think about it over time. Do we have to wait to 2050 to get to net zero? I don't think so. I don't think that math prevents us from doing so. But hey, I'm not the only public finance expert in this room.
Thanks, Jan. Anyone else? Dave, you want to comment?
Sure, I'll just jump in. One, remember, it's the length of time. So it's one thing to look at the $1 billion and it looks like a big number, but I'd unpack a couple of that. First of all, I got to take back. First of all, I'm very optimistic. I actually don't think funding is a barrier. I think between the Inflation Reduction Act and what has been put in place federally, and as Jan referred to, the Climate Commitment Act and the available proceeds from the Climate Commitment Act, and that combined with our own energy savings that we're creating through these activities that we've already started to do. I think the combination of those three more than make up the $1 billion that's required. Secondly, you have to look holistically at what we spend already. We spend almost $24 million on electricity every year, which is going up by 10% next year, by the way. We spend almost $11 million on natural gas. The Climate Commitment Act, the proceeds that we pay into, it's between $5 to $10 million. So add up those, multiply it by 10 years, and you're at like $450 million. Now, we can't eliminate all of that, but we can go a long way towards sort of optimizing the whole life cycle cost of the capital piece plus the operating piece. And that's the lens by which this needs to be looked at. So I actually don't think funding is the barrier. I'd also, my boss is coming down now. I think I've triggered him. But and the other part I made reference earlier, the Inflation Reduction Act sunsets. So there is a motivation to go fast, but I'll also highlight, Anna Mari was 100% right on when she had it in her presidential address. She highlighted that we can't just flip the switch on this. And she's right. Like in what I'm talking about, we got to convert the campus from steam to hot water, right? Put in 8 miles of new pipes in the ground. We got to switch over the energy transfer stations in 170 buildings. At UBC, we did that. We thought we were rushing when we did that. That was a 6-year exercise from the first shovel going in the ground to when that was complete. Right. So, yeah, we're going to have the advantages of lessons learned from that. Our campus is a little more condensed here. We have tunnels. UBC didn't. So there's perhaps, instead what took them 6 years, we could do 4 years, but it's 4 years from shovel going in the ground. Right. We have a plan. We have the strategy that I laid out. We've hired a consultant team that's developing a plan right now. They're tasked to be completed, that implementation plan, the order of the projects, the sequencing of the cash flows, the delivery models of each one of those projects. That work is to be complete by August 2024. So they don't just race out and just spend money for the sake of spending money on the good appeals of this. We actually do this in a smart way that's in the best interest of the university, that minimizes disruption, makes the best use of those projects so that they happen. So that's what's happening. And yeah, it means that you can't recover heat from the cooling towers, and you can't recover heat from the sewer, and you can't recover heat from the lake if you don't have a hot water system in place first. So as much as I would love to say that we could do this quicker, I actually think we're being really aggressive in saying that we're doing this over the next 10 years. I think 10 years is doable based on what we did at UBC and what we've laid out here. And there's motivation, as I said, from the Inflation Reduction Act to go faster than 10 years. And that just means to be smart. The Inflation Reduction Act pays after the work is complete. So if we put this all as one big package, we're actually putting ourselves at risk of not being eligible for 50% of the funding. If we break it up into packages, then the packages that we can finish early can be eligible and we can access those funds. So it's just a big endeavor. And I don't mean to, I don't mean at all to be to say in any way that we're not acting with a sense of urgency. We are. And we also believe that at the University of Washington, the challenge that we have here on the Seattle campus is one of the biggest challenges in the state of Washington for any public sector entity. And even outside of public sector, look at Serio, the big energy company in downtown Seattle. They have the same issue. There's a lot that we can do and demonstrate here on the campus that can inform everybody else, right? Washington State University, other schools, other private hospitals. Anyway, so there we go. Funding, it's doable. I actually don't think funding is the barrier. I think it's just really the pragmatic aspect of how we deliver.
I wanted to add a little different perspective, and that is that the current time estimates and cost estimates are based on existing technology. There is a lot of innovation in this space going on. We run an environmental innovation challenge, and the student ideas and products are amazing. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's going on out there, exploring different ways to tackle this problem in significant ways. So I just think innovation is going to play a really important role in potentially accelerating and reducing the cost of the solutions we implement in the future. Lou, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you. And I think yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Lou Cariello, the Vice President of Facilities here at the University of Washington. And I just wanted to emphasize one point, and I don't know if this is going to resonate or not, but I think it's an important point to make. Dave hit on a lot of the points, and I appreciate what Dean Hodge just said about innovation and technology in the future that really represents phase 5 of Dave's 5-part decarbonization strategy. But I don't want it to be lost on this audience or any audience with respect to what the university is doing. Your university, your president, your board of regents have made a decision to do this 5-part strategy to decarbonize the steam plant. I personally feel great pride in the success that we have achieved recently in making the argument, telling the story about the value proposition here, and the decision that the university has made to do this. I also think that the amount of time that it's going to take, I don't think we can point to any other institution necessarily that's doing this faster, planning to do this faster. Dave talked about 10 years. There's a practicality associated with digging up trenches and doing, neighborhood hot steam to hot water transitions across this campus while we are operating a campus that needs to do research and teach and deliver healthcare and public service. So I've challenged Dave and our consultant team to get it done in 7 or 8 years instead of 10 years. So that's what we're working on. But, for Lela and for everyone that thinks like her, I would like to think that this is a source of pride for all of us that we're associated with the University of Washington that is pursuing this really challenging endeavor, and we're eager for it. So that may sound a little bit gratuitous to some, but I wanted to share that. I think you all deserve to feel proud of the direction we're going on as it relates to our energy plant.
Lou, I really want to thank you for coming down and offering that really helpful statement. So when we talk about getting to net zero by 2035, that does seem to be in sync with these aggressive plans. And the thing is that when organizations around the world talk about their climate action, they talk about setting targets and reaching targets. And so when we talk about 95 by 35, that's what we're talking about. I think one of the conclusions that I was able to reach when talking to these people individually, talking about their plans individually, was I think we can actually set that target. I think that we can actually set that target and have some confidence that we can get there. And that's something we can communicate to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is going to see that's a target that UW can make. How are they doing that? That's what leadership looks like in this space.
Thank you, Jen. I think that sentiment is a big part of what made the argument compelling for President Kause and for our Board of Regents is the university's opportunity to lead and have more impact outside of our campus boundaries. And it extends to, we will be briefing the Board of Regents on our annual sustainability update on November 9th, for those that want to observe that. We've pre-briefed that to the President and the Provost, and we made that point. In addition to the energy plant, there are other initiatives that we're moving on to decarbonize and achieve sustainability initiatives. And the foundation of the conversation is really rooted in that ability to lead and impact more than just what we have control over on our campus.
Great. Thank you. No worries. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. We've got about 15 more minutes before we're officially supposed to be complete with the event. So I want to try to keep us on track with time. I've got one more question, and then I want to move to questions from you all and from folks online. So Frank, I was really interested in your pre-initiative, learning a little bit more about the pre-initiative. It was great to see some examples of how the Foster School is educating future leaders through some of your programs, and then also the actual I won't say concrete example, the mass timber example with the new building. Could you talk just a little bit more, tell us a little bit more about the pre-initiative and how you think that will help sort of expand the education and of future leaders, not only through that initiative, but also I guess other means as well.
Well, the pre-initiative, as Lou mentioned, is designed to make us a global leader in this space. We already think we have the expertise, both in a breadth and depth sense, to be a global leader. So let's organize around that in a cohesive, collaborative way to have true impact. And so that's what the pre-initiative is about. It's purposely named Climate Action and Adaptation because we realize solving this problem is going to take time. That's the action piece. But we have to help people that are struggling to survive in the current environment. That's the adaptation piece. And we think we need both. And so we're going to encourage research. We're going to encourage teaching. We're going to encourage students to get involved. And I'll give you 3 ways that we encourage students to get involved in this. One is integrate conversations about this into the core classes, right? So that this is a part of the decision framework that they're thinking about when they decide whether or not to do something. The second is layer electives on top of that are very meaningful to this conversation. So for example, Professor Elizabeth Stearns is in the audience. She teaches some of our sustainability related classes in the Foster School. Those are complements to the discussions in the core classes. Take those seeds that we're planting in the classroom and provide experiential learning opportunities in the communities. And when I say that, I mean with the communities, not to the communities, so that students can actually live this alongside those that are doing this work out in the community. And then the last piece was to give them employment opportunities so that they can go into this industry and be employed in typically smaller companies, not the large companies that are doing the meaningful work in this space.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now I want to make sure we have time for questions from you all. So we have a few folks with microphones. Misty over here, and BB, I think you've got one. Any questions from the audience here in person? Okay, great. I think BB, we've got one, 2, and then 3.
Hi, my name's Amber. I also am in institutional climate action, by the way. My question is primarily for you, David Woodson. So I corresponded with you via email in July about the last 20% chunk of emissions, and I just have some follow-up questions. And for the audience, the last 20%, according to the website, is planned to begin being addressed around 2033, 2035. And the other 80% is planned to be completed by then. So that's what it looks like on the website. But anyways, as of July 12th, you stated that the detailed inventories had not been performed on this final push chunk of emissions. And the 20% is actually primarily an estimated figure based on your experience from UBC. You also said that there are no immediate plans to get said inventory. So I understand that there may be strings attached to the potential solutions to these emissions, as there are with all climate solutions. But I wanted to know, how can you sit in front of us and say with full confidence that the best solution to this problem is to sit and wait for better technology when it turns out that you actually do not have the data to even have a full understanding of the problem?
Great question, Amber. Nice to meet you in person. And I do remember that email exchange that we had. So a couple things. I think one of the parts that I was trying to get across is that it's kind of like in general, as it turns out, 80-20 is still kind of the piece here, but like an 80-20 rule of the effort that we need to make as a campus to address the bulk of the emissions related to the plant is associated with the plan that we've laid out here, right? The switch to hot water, the consolidate cooling, the heat recovery from the sewer, the connections to the lake. None of that is going to be easy, and it is going to take a concerted organizational effort and partnership with outside companies in order to achieve. And part of the message I was trying to say is the mind space or the time and effort that needs to happen now needs to be primarily focused on that 80% piece, not on trying to optimize the last 20%. And to get into 20% a bit, and we did in the email exchange, but just for everybody in the audience, right? We use steam not just for heating buildings. It's primarily used for heating buildings, but it's also used in the hospital. It's used for process loads, for autoclaves. And so this was the conversation we were having around, well, what percent is actually the hospital? What percent is the actual autoclaves? And so like, you know, is it 80-20? Is it 85-15? Like, what is the real number there? And my point that I still believe in is to say that the effort and our time is best spent on this first bulk piece reduction. And in parallel, as we make progress on the grand plan, we can start to evaluate the last pieces. I believe I also would have said something about there are technologies today, but there's certain strings attached to them, like renewable natural gas, for example. We could buy renewable natural gas to account for the last 15-20%. We could use carbon capture on the stack, for example, for the last 15-20% related to carbon emissions. But there's strings attached with both of those solutions. And so the part of the plan is to say, we don't need to decide today on that last piece. We can evaluate the improvements or changes or developments in technologies over the time period while we're doing the big legwork on the other 80 piece to say, hey, if something else comes to fruition, let's jump on it. We don't have to wait to 10 years to jump on it, but I don't feel like there's an advantage to today making a decision on the last 20 of the things that are out there, like renewable natural gas or pieces on the stack. So
I think it's probably safe to say that that graph is going to change, because the goal is ultimately to be able to work on each of these categories of emissions fast enough to get to our goal. But within that 10, 12-year period.
I mean, and as Lou highlighted, right, the pressure is to do the big plan within 7 to 8 years or to accelerate that. So absolutely. And so that doesn't mean we need to wait to the end to get to the last piece. We can keep an eye to the last piece. It just means we don't have to make the decision today on what that final piece is.
So it's events like this that allow us to reevaluate graphics like that and say, why do we have that sitting out there beginning in 2033? That if we can accelerate this timeline, that means we have to accelerate that component of the work as well. And can we do that? How can we do that? So events like this are meant to motivate questions exactly like the one you're asking.
And I also try to be really open with stuff. So as much as we exchanged over emails, this is fun here at the town hall as well. We have the student task force. I'm like open to have these guys. Sometimes things don't come across an email as they do in conversation, and I'm more than willing to continue conversations going on that.
That's a great question. Setting the bar high. Oh, ICA. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm also part of ICA, and a lot of students on campus have and want to continue to be a part of this transition. How can we get involved and be informed on the progress and have them be as transparent as possible of what is going on currently?
Well, the first easy answer is the student task force that we have set up. There's no restriction with respect to that, and the fundamental piece that we have with that sort of committee structure is to keep people informed of what is taking place and creating a spot for dialogue, for questions, and going deeper in it. Lela, you've been on that committee. Anyway, that's one piece. Second piece, we also have a faculty task force. And through the faculty task force, we're also trying to identify opportunities for capstone projects that could come out of or could help inform some of the later work that we're doing in the program. So anyway, those are the first two things that come to mind. I don't know if you want to speak to your experience on the.
Yeah, I will say the student task force is a great place to go if you want to just like hear updates, keep informed. I will say that you can also like join ICA, kind of a shameless plug there, or there's lots of like other environmental student organizations. I know like Foster School of Business has an environmental club, Net Impact, and there's EPSA. There's lots of like ways you can get involved. I will also say like there's a lot of students and who all have like different strengths, and if you have an idea or some way that you think you can contribute, like you should. And there's lots of aspects of this challenge that need to be tackled. There's the activism piece, there's the business piece, funding, all of these things. I mean, we need students with different strengths to be involved. And the last piece I will say is I would love if there was a way for students, like I've been involved in this and I've been working on it, and I would say it took me like almost a year to like feel fully informed on it and like what's going on, what's happening. And so I would love if there was a way in the future to have like an easier digestible form for students to know about this. This town hall is like an example of that, but to continue that. And then also to have a way for students to share their voices. So again, I'm on this panel, which I'm really grateful for, but I do feel like there can be kind of like a disconnect between students and admin or the people who are working to enact this change. Both like information coming down, but also like students are a huge part of this campus and will be affected by this, care about this. And so finding a way for us, our voices to be heard would also be really wonderful. And I think is something that we could work on in the future.
I have two things to add to that question. One is that this registered student organization, UW Solar, I'm their faculty advisor. So I'm going to put a shout out for that group because UW Solar is responsible for having raised the funds and built some 90% of all the solar assets on the UW campus. And one part of the grand plan is to be able to even increase those numbers for solar generation to reduce the impact on the electrical grid for Seattle City Light and our purchases for Seattle City Light, because solar, despite our rainy city, solar actually makes money for the UW campus. Another point I'd like to make is that the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship is looking for student representatives. So we need student representatives to join our faculty council and have student representatives on a lot of these faculty councils. So the Faculty Senate is interested in you if you want to come hear what faculty talk about in our Faculty Senate. So we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to see you become part of student government and shared governance with the faculty. This year, we are working on legislation that we intend to bring to the Senate Executive Committee and the Faculty Senate that sets a new target of 95 by 35 for the University of Washington. So that's what we're working on this year. You want to come be part of that? Come join up and represent.
Awesome. And I'll add a few more options for folks to get engaged, especially students. So Lela and Dave talked about the Student Energy Task Force. That was formed about a year ago through a collaboration with our office and Campus Energy and Utilities, really wanting students to have a direct line to this project in particular, this huge effort. And our office actually has a posting out now to hire a new staff person, and that will be a large part of their job is to have an official student sustainability advisory committee. So it will cover more than just the scope 1 emissions and the direct emissions that you heard about today. It will encompass scope 2 and largely scope 3, which, by the way, stay tuned. We have a new report and a lot of new data coming out in the fall. So that's one. Please be on the lookout for that new student sustainability advisory committee. And we'll probably officially kick that off next fall. If we can do it sooner, we will, but we'll get some information out about that. We also have 2 other committees, interdisciplinary committees that are tri-campus, and they include a lot of self-sustaining units. So medicine, housing and food services, there are faculty representatives, there are also student representatives on our environmental stewardship committee. Those meet quarterly, and we're discussing big issues like this one. We're discussing how we can change our operations with respect to scope 3, the goods and services that we buy as a university. Air travel has been a recent topic of discussion. So and anyone can listen and join those meetings. Those are also on our website. And the third committee that I will talk about, because we love committees here at UW, is the Sustainability Action Plan Executive Committee. So we're gearing up to update that plan. We update it on a 5-year cycle. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. I think it's a great plan, but there's a lot of areas that we're planning to address that are not currently addressed in that plan. And there's a huge opportunity for student engagement in that process, in that update process, but you're also always welcome to join and listen in on those committees. And I'd say they meet monthly, thereabouts. So please contact our office. And then obviously, thank you, Damon. The last great opportunity is our Campus Sustainability Fund. So we've got Tatiana Brown here and a lot of folks. Bo, I don't know if Court's here today, but folks with our Campus Sustainability Fund. And maybe I'll just, Tatiana, you're the best person to talk about that. Why don't you give an overview for people?
Yeah, hi, I'm the Associate Director for the Campus Sustainability Fund. And I was also the co-chair with, I believe, Christoph is here, who was with the UW Sustainability Office. And so we co-chaired and created the student task force for the decarbonization effort. And I would really say we are in a little bit of a transition period right now, but we are looking to organize a teach-in sponsored by Campus Sustainability Fund, and we hope that ICA will join us in hosting this. And I think if you're looking to learn, that's a really great opportunity to try to have this as the opportunity for you to learn the material well enough to really try to give a session on what's going on related to what you learned today. Also, how the Climate Commitment Act is functioning, how this relates to the Inflation Reduction Act, and really how all of this relates to us in the institution and the power that we have as students. I'm a graduate student. The CSF is fully student run. We've been since 2009. And so I'd also say we're a good resource in terms of if you all want to have projects that you would like money for, we have money. We invest about $400,000 every year into student work on campus that helps bring us to a more sustainable state. So yeah, that's an opportunity. And we'll also likely be launching a special grant cycle later this year focused on decarbonizing our campus. And so there are a lot of great opportunities there. I would definitely say ICA is an amazing resource for students to get engaged with. And yeah, if you all have any questions, just through funding many student projects and investing over $4 million into this campus, we've gathered a lot of really amazing partners. And so I'd encourage you all to, go to our Instagram, go to our website. And if you have questions about just how you can get involved and you don't know where to start, we share the office with UW Sustainability down at Gerberding Hall. So please stop by, and one of us is more than happy to kind of sit down and chat with you and help you see a possible direction. We all have agency. I know we're just trying to figure out how to do that. And together, I think we have an amazing opportunity for collective impact.
Thanks, Tatiana. Okay, we have time for one more question, and everybody's probably hungry, ready for dinner. All right, we'll do 2 quick questions. Can we get a microphone over here, and Jeremy, and then we'll see how we're doing on time.
Hello, my name's Chapman. I'm staff here at UW. I'm Associate Director of Operations at the Clean Energy Institute. It's really cool to see all the work that all of you are doing on this. I just wanted to clarify, it sounds like from Jan's comments, there isn't currently a binding commitment for 95.
No, there isn't. Our
Okay.
only binding commitment is net zero by 2050 right now.
Okay, so my question is, what is the official process to get the binding commitment, and what is like the timeline that we're hoping for? And is there a way for staff, students, and community members to support like just finalizing that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So right now, the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship has a draft Class C resolution. That's a form of legislation that the Faculty Senate develops. That's a statement of faculty intent. And that Class C resolution urges that the University of Washington immediately adopt a 95% reduction by 2035, a commitment to that. And it also includes targets that are intermediate targets for 2030, for example. And this would also be, obviously, 95 by 35 would be net zero by 2035, so that we could meet the full requirements of the existing state law. Instead of meeting it in 2050, we can meet it in 2035. So we have to bring that legislation through to a vote in the Faculty Council on Campus Planning and Stewardship. Some of my colleagues, Gunilla Prox, Jeremy Hess, are with us today, are also on that council. We have to bring it to a vote in our council. And we have to then take that legislation, which will be about a month from now. Then we have to take that legislation and put it on the agenda of the Senate Executive Committee. In the Senate Executive Committee, these meetings are people can come, join the meetings, speak in the meetings. They can express their interest and their concern in this new target. Then I think, does it go anywhere after that? We could actually put it on the agenda of the Faculty Senate too, if we wanted to have a larger voice about it. It goes back even for us. Okay, it'll come back to the Faculty Senate. Yeah, so there'll be opportunities. We can advertise widely what those opportunities are going to be for you to come participate in those meetings and have a voice, express your voice in favor of the legislation. Those are strong messages that the administration takes seriously. So in the Senate Executive Committee, the president of the university is there. Where the provost is there, we're all there discussing what this means. Okay, I like that ringtone.
Must be a sign. Okay. Jeremy, I think you had a question, and then we'll do a question or two online, and understand if people have to take off, that's fine. We'll stay a little bit longer to get to some of the questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Hess. I'm a professor in the School of Medicine and School of Public Health, and I appreciate you taking the time to present all of this to us. School of Medicine in particular, it is not really, isn't up here a lot. And yet the School of Medicine budget is about $5 billion a year and matches the university budget. So there are implications for the School of Medicine and UW Medicine in this work. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on some of that, because I try and carry the water between upper campus and lower campus and explain some of these things and message it to that large and complicated institution. Thank you.
Yeah, you make a really good point, Jeremy. One of the nice things about the Faculty Senate is that we have representation from all of the colleges, and that of course includes UW Medicine. And so it will be absolutely critical for our colleagues in UW Medicine to hear the voices of concern about climate and about decarbonization, and voices in favor of this legislation across the campus. I also think that it could be worthwhile for us to set up more direct communications with folks in the administration at UW Medicine on the issue, and have some facilitated discussions about that. Because I think when you have a really large and powerful entity in terms of determining how the capital budget is decided each year, they can have a big effect in just deciding whether or not initiatives like this succeed. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. Go for it.
I just want to say that, like, I've actually had some really what I would call encouraging and positive dialogue with leadership with UW Medicine, and we've been doing one of the sort of socializing efforts we've been doing as a unit. Lisa and myself, we just did one today. We call them our decarbonization tours of the steam plant, which is kind of puts in context of what we have to change, but also in the lens of the plan and what we're changing. We are at the moment efforting to get the leadership at Medicine to be able to, they've expressed a desire to do that. They've heard of the tours and they want to come on the tour and better understand. I think there's a lot of positive elements of the program that influences medicine in a good way. Compliance with a lot of the state legislation is done through these efforts. that they benefit from. Also, embedded into the plan is the ability to reuse energy. And so although the medical buildings consume a lot of energy, they also represent a key opportunity to recapture, reclaim, and reuse. We just don't have the systems in place today that enable that to happen. But once again, that's the benefit of a hot water system, is to reuse that. So yeah, I think there's actually a really, really positive story to be told and to be played out there, and the partnership with them. And we just need to increase the dialogue. So I appreciate the question and the comment.
I'll add too, and I sort of made a joke about all the committees we have, but our Environmental Stewardship Committee, our Sustainability Action Plan Executive Committee, we have representation, as you know, and our expanding representation from UW Medicine. And it is a very important way to share information from, upper and lower campus, like you suggested, and make sure that we're all swimming in the same direction and getting a pulse for how we feel about some of these big issues that we're talking about. So I think that's just another avenue. Make sure that we have good engagement there. Okay, I think we'll do one. We've got some questions from folks online, and this one. Okay, is there any sense of whether UW administration, including the Board of Regents and the president, shares the urgency expressed here in terms of the commitment to taking action, not just in their words?
I think the short answer is yes. I mean, the president's speech last week, not only was it embedded in, I thought actually kind of how she sort of framed what has to happen on the campus in relationship to, public health issues and the existential issue of climate change. I thought it was perfect. And then there was even there's a video recording of the presentation. There was also, I think it was the second question that she responded to. She went into detail with respect to the power plant. And I thought her answer struck the right balance of, yep, there's a sense of urgency, but I think that she used the term, it's not a switch to be flipped overnight. And when she said that, to me, that resonated exactly of what the truth is, that we're going as fast as we can. Frankly, if someone turned around tomorrow and gave me, $5 million more to do something else, I actually have all the funding that I need right now to do everything that is happening right now. Ask me in August 2024, different story. But right now, it's everything that could be happening here is happening. It's actually super encouraging. I mean, I'm super encouraged with it. And the Board of Regents, I was not at the September meeting, but my understanding from the September meeting was that that they are all in on addressing the power plant and the energy piece and having it done within the next 10 years. The decarbonization tours I spoke to, when we gave an update last November on the energy plan, we offered tours to the Board of Regents. We've had 3 of them come on the tours. So fantastic engagement. And yeah, I feel the support from where I sit in the organization.
Okay. Frank, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that the climate action and adaptation work is coming directly out of the Board of Deans and Chancellors, which is all of the deans at the University of Washington, Seattle, plus the 2 chancellors from Tacoma and Bothell. And so this is a collaborative, cohesive effort to put climate front and center in our actions going forward.
Thanks, Frank. So I want to thank you all so much for being here, for engaging in this discussion. I really want to thank our panelists. This was awesome. And so just a final thought. I know folks really want to stay engaged and stay informed about the power plant project, but also about other issues that we're working on at the university. So our office, UW Sustainability, please sign up for our newsletter if you're or contact us to stay up to date on what we're offering. We are going to be doing periodic webinars on some different issues, updates from Dave and Campus Energy Utilities on the power plant project. There's a lot of new information coming. So stay tuned, and thanks again.